is that I work for A21, which is an anti-human trafficking organization, and I specifically work in the Education and Prevention Department. And so I support educators in the public school system who are working to prevent sexual exploitation of kindergarten through 12th grade students. So, super kind of heavy, but super grateful for my job and privileged. And so I just get to kind of share with you tonight kind of the landscape of what we see students and teenagers facing, but how hopeful our hope in the Lord and in the gospel is. This is heavy stuff, but I want to encourage your hearts. Our God remains unoverwhelmed. He is so able to handle this, and this is where we bring our burdens. And so you as parents, we're here to provide you with support and knowledge, but the Holy Spirit in you has that wisdom to help you apply that knowledge. And so I just want to affirm that as you go to the Holy Spirit to navigate this, like, He is enough. So, anyways, we're gonna dive right in. These challenges that I see play out for students are in three main areas. So I'm kind of gonna go through those. I'm gonna share some statistics for the landscape that we see. Those three main areas are cyberbullying, trafficking and sexual abuse, and sexual addiction and sexual identity. So for cyberbullying, unfortunately, this is really rampant and widespread. You used to be able to get away from a bully. You could stand up to them, you could go home, you could leave the playground, you could even transfer schools if it got bad enough. But what we're seeing today is something where it follows you home, it follows you into your bedroom, it follows you behind closed doors because it's on your phones. And we've even seen students who transfer schools, and it follows them there because they're all on the same apps and the same platforms. And it's really, really rampant, and just having a massive effect on mental, emotional, relational, social health of our students. The best offense for this is 100% talking to your students, even just asking questions like, hey, have you ever witnessed any cyberbullying? You know, and ask them that question and see what they say. And honestly, they probably have. And then I wanted to share a couple resources as far as like one church where I was at, the parents used the Bark app, which was just interesting, especially if your child is ever a victim. Basically, any incoming messages that sound like bullying, it will send an alert to your phone. So there's no perfect safe app, there just isn't. There's only safe behaviors on apps or safe conversations, but some of these tools do help. And then also, I really like NetSmart Kids for younger kids. So this, you can find it on YouTube, and NetSmarts is spelled with a Z, so it's like NetSmarts, and it talks about being safe online, and talks about even little kids being an upstander. So if you see cyberbullying, being like, that's not nice, you know, super basic, kindergarten, super helpful. This, unfortunately, okay, sorry, our slides aren't working, so I'm gonna check real quick. Okay, this transitions, unfortunately, well into sexual abuse, because one form of cyberbullying is sextortion. So we have rampant sharing of nudes as young as middle school and probably earlier. So the latest research says 1/3 of 9 to 17-year-olds say that sharing nudes is acceptable behavior, and 1 in 5 of 9 to 17-year-olds have shared a nude, and 50% of them have shared a nude with a stranger. So it's not even just a significant other. 1 in 5 kids say they have seen nudes that were shared non-consensually as well. So I've had this with one of my students, she's just chilling in art class and gets airdropped nudes. This is just the water that they're swimming in, and unfortunately this can lead to cyberbullying and sextortion because someone gets a hold of that and they say, we had a student recently who was like, hey, I took a compromising photo of you in the locker room, pay me $50, I'm gonna text it all over school. One, that is a major crime, and so students need to understand the danger of that. And then two, that one student who's being sextorted panics. So a lot of students don't come forward with this information because they feel like maybe it's their fault, or, you know, like, again, it's a different world growing up where every non-wise choice you make is recorded and has a history and a memory. You know, it used to be you did something, it was wrong, you repented, now you did something, it was wrong, and there's a permanent record of it, and that is terrifying for students. And so we really walk them through. There are safe ways to get those images down, working with law enforcement, but sometimes it's not possible. So anyways, that's something that we're seeing a lot of. We have a middle school where trading nudes is like trading Pokemon cards. Everyone is collecting them of each other. So it's really sad. I spent a lot of time with an educator who just said, we need to understand that they're very numb to this. So even if they're not participating, they've seen it and they know that it's happening. They're very, very numb. And so we have to approach it with a lot of compassion, a lot of things like, no matter how shocking anything a student shares with me is, I always look them in the eye and I say, thank you for trusting me. Now I'm gonna help you. And so, but it's really hard. You feel shocked when some of the things that they say to you. So, just don't want them in that space. So, along with this is super depressing. The U.S. is the #1 consumer of CSAM. CSAM is child sexual abuse material. So this is the material that's being produced all over the world, specifically like child pornography. And right now the US hosts, more sexual abuse online than any other country has found, than any other country in the world is what the new research from MIT Technology has found. And so, once thought to be mainly a challenge for boys, the gender gap is rapidly closing, by the time youth ages 14 to 18 have been exposed to pornography, 84% of males and 57% of females. The majority of kids are exposed to porn by age 13, with some exposed as young as 7. When you're 7 years old and you see that, that's a trauma response in the brain. That's not something you go looking for. This is something where perpetrators systematically target students who are vulnerable with this explicit content, or kids are just freaked out and they're showing it to each other. And so, again, just being aware of what's happening in their brains and having conversations up front with them. Again, that's our biggest offense is conversation, and having those conversations and just being like, if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable online, starting when they're little, if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable online, like, it's okay to tell me. You're not going to be in trouble. We're going to help you set those boundaries. Because when they're that little, it's like a panic response. So, and pornography has never been good or right, but I have found it's really helpful to mention the pornography of 30 years ago was not right, but what we are seeing today is nothing like that. What we are seeing today is violent, it's rape, it's against children, and it's homosexual porn. And so, it's a very different addiction response than it was 30, 40 years ago. And so there's help for that, 100%, but just even approaching it a little bit differently. I don't have the exact stat for this, but obviously social media has made this even more challenging. The UK recently released a stat that was like, and I don't know the exact number, so I'm not going to tell you it, but they've seen a massive increase in the number of boys they've had to expel for sexually violent behavior against girls, and they have linked it directly back to TikTok influencers like Andrew Tate, who have pornography and rape videos online. So that's something, again, where accountability for big tech is really important, because those should be taken down, and he should not be allowed to have that platform, So, anyways, yeah. When it comes to sexual abuse, stranger danger, we found, doesn't really work. Most kids are abused by someone that they know and love and trust. So having more conversations about safe and unsafe, comfortable and uncomfortable, teaching our kids to be willing to say, that makes me uncomfortable. No. I know it's like, and thank the Lord, when I was younger, I was never in a situation like this. I was a really polite kid. I never would have said, no, and so just giving our kids permission, like, we want them to be respectful, of course, but to be able to say, that makes me uncomfortable, no. Being really informed about where they're having sleepovers, just things like that. Perpetrators systematically target students in the early hours of the morning when they are least likely to be supervised by a parent or guardian. So I just tell everyone, like, there's no need for your child to sleep with their phone, buy them an alarm clock, put it on airplane mode, have a family basket phone, something, because they will get video calls calls physicians. My husband was shadowing a physician, and we have kids coming in with sleep problems, anxiety, depression, because they're being woken up at all hours of the night with video calls and texts and chats and DMs and all of that stuff. So just like the phones overnight, perpetrators systematically target kids on the multiplayer like video games and stuff. And I'm not saying end all the video games. I have 2 brothers who are in high school and they love those. That's how they keep up with their friends. But I had a conversation with them about this, and I was like, so what do you do when you get those sketchy friend requests or those messages like, oh, we block and report? You know, they think it's so cool. They're like part of the justice. And I was like, good job. And I, gave them a little pep talk because I'm a little paranoid. So there are just those conversations that we can have with our teenagers. It doesn't mean they have to stop playing video games or using their phones. But again, just having those conversations. So, sorry, y'all, I'm going really fast because I have a lot of resources. But these are listed in the back of your folder that Annie printed, so thank you so much, Annie. But just some really helpful resources that I found for littles has been Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. They have one for ages 3 to 6 and ages 7 to 11. This teaches kids if they accidentally see something that makes them uncomfortable, they turn, run, and tell. It also talks about like pictures are good, they show us wonderful things in the world. So very age appropriate, very like not heavy, and something I'm absolutely gonna read with my toddler because I was just like, they're growing up in the world of YouTube. So, and then the second one I want to highlight is the age 21. I mean, granted, I work there, but I don't make any money off of y'all downloading these PDFs. They're free, and they're the parent guides, and they're guides for digital safety and guides for children and teens. 2-3 pages. Give them a quick read. They give you talking points. They give you ideas for strategies. Love these. So good. And then also to highlight Thorn for Parents. You can go to that, thornforparents.org. It's not a Christian resource, so I wouldn't necessarily use it as like the gospel truth, but they've done years and years of statistical data research of the landscape. So that's where I got the nudes and sexting statistics. So they're really helpful. They also have some parent questions like, hey, these are great talking points for ages 13 to 17 questions to ask your child. So those are great. Okay, so those are the first 2 that I see play out, cyberbullying and then sexual addiction and abuse. Thirdly, sexual identity. It's a rising challenge in our culture. Everyone's asking, who am I? And it depends on where they go for the answer, what they're gonna hear. And the culture is really quick to rush in and say, this is who you are who you feel, what you feel, you are what you're thinking about, whatever it is, even if you're confused about how you feel or you're confused about what you think. So it's important to differentiate, and I'm sure you will on this more, between those living a gay lifestyle and those who are struggling with SSA or same-sex attraction or any other sexual identity thing. We see a lot of middle schoolers who, like, these middle school girls are like, I think they're gay, and you're like, why do you think that? And you're like, well, because like this is my best friend and it's another girl, and it's just a complete misunderstanding. But like, you're 12, that's really healthy. You want to have a best friend, that you care deeply for. But they're mistaking those for romantic feelings because romantic love is the only love that's explained to them. And so, again, just having those conversations up front. And I think resources for this, the best resource is Living Hope Podcast and Ministry, and it's actually out of Dallas. And they have really great teaching. Cameron and I have watched some of their stuff. They have a podcast for those of you who maybe don't have time to read a book and you're driving your commute. They help you understand parent-child bonding and relationships, conversations. They also have support groups. So I have friends who have gone to that ministry and they just say it's so encouraging and amazing. They have parent support groups, and like if you have a child or a family member struggling, and then they also have support and counseling and accountability and encouragement for if someone is struggling with sexual identity or sexual addiction. So, and then the other resource is a book called Is God Anti-Gay by Sam Alberry. Super short for those of you who just need like an intro. I loved it because it just helps me understand. Super short, super simple. He is a Christian who has said I was celibate because I am not gay. That is not who I am, but I struggle with SSA. And he really just goes into an understanding of the gospel, how the gospel asks everything of all of us, and it asks complete surrender from everyone. And so it was really beautiful. And then, not just for SSA, but all things sexuality in general, right? Because it's hard. A lot of us maybe weren't given very much in this area. No sex ed used to mean no sex ed. No sex ed now means that the media and Netflix and culture and friends will educate in this area. And so even though we weren't given much, we need to be able to give that. And so we're kind of like, oh, we need resources. So my number one favorite resource for this is Rethinking Sexuality by Dr. Julie Slattery. She runs a ministry called Authentic Intimacy, and this is a book about the gospel applied to sexuality. And I was just so encouraged reading this. It has questions at the end of every chapter that I would super encourage. If you have an older teenager, maybe be like, hey, will you read chapter 1 and I'll read chapter 1? And then we get together and talk about the questions, something like that. Super good. Even if you don't have a teenager, it was a really great just understanding the gospel and sexuality. So she also has a podcast for, again, those of you who like that. And so that was a lot of information. A lot of it was heavy. Thank you for sticking with me. Not fun stats, but I do want to conclude and just let you know that, again, our God remains unoverwhelmed. He knew before time began that this is the culture our kids would grow up in. And I wrestled through a lot of fear. I'm 16 weeks pregnant, so this is our first, and I was so excited, but also kind of terrified, to be perfectly honest with you, because this is what I work in every day. And it's just, everybody's had to trust God with their kids, and we can do the same. And so I would just encourage you with this. Everyone who's close to me who's struggled in these areas, whether it's sexual identity, sexual addiction, one of the main things that helped work through that was bringing it into the light and vulnerability in a safe way. I'm not talking about advertising it, but bringing it into the light, having conversations, going to counseling or accountability. It is a really healing thing, and it can really bring a lot of restoration. And so I want to encourage you, even for you, if it's your child, or for your child if they're open to it. I did have one teenager who was like, I wanted to talk about this, but my parents were kind of like, no, stop doing that. And then we didn't talk about it for 5 years. And so, just opening that up and making it a safe place to have those conversations is probably our best offense. And then Shauna is going to come and just talk to us and encourage us about what that can also look like.